Good Thursday, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Conversation Daily News. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Well, we made it over the hump, and we're in the home stretch toward the weekend. We, of course, have your news headline coming up on this Thursday. We have a message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By. And in today's Entertainment Spotlight, you've been part of my conversation with Renee Linnell, the author of the new book, Still on Fire. You don't want to miss that. Enjoy today's broadcast. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your Thursday headlines. In international news, Ukrainians flee grim life in Russian-occupied Kherson. Kherson, located north of the Crimean Peninsula, was annexed by Moscow in 2014 and the first city to fall after Russia's invasion on February 24th. The port remains at the heart of the conflict and Ukraine's efforts to preserve its vital access to the sea. For Russia, Kherson is a key point along the land corridor from its border to the peninsula. The streets in the city, which had a pre-war occupation of about 300,000, are mostly deserted. Rumors swirl about acts of armed resistance and the sudden disappearance of officials who refuse to cooperate with the Russian authorities. Occupation forces patrol in markets to warn those trying to use the Ukrainian currency in transactions. Pro-Moscow officials have been installed in local and regional governments as well as on the police force. Workers at various municipal services face pressure to cooperate with Russian managers. Most schools have closed. Supplies of essential goods are uneven, halting most commercial activity. There are shortages of medicines and spikes in the price of other commodities. Many residents have been determined to hold out as long as possible for a promised Ukrainian counterattack that hasn't materialized. A referendum on the region becoming a part of Russia has been announced by Moscow-installed officials, although no date has been set. Meanwhile, officials are pressuring those remaining to take Russian citizenship. Those wanting to leave Kherson must pass a series of Russian military checkpoints. Soldiers search belongings, identity papers, and mobile phones, with anyone suspected of supporting the resistance facing interrogation at so-called filtration camps. As Kherson sinks into poverty, it's getting harder to leave. A bus to the northeast now costs the equivalent of $160. Before the war, it was $10. Moscow wants to maintain its hold on Kherson, which is strategically located near the North Crimean Canal that provides water to the Russian-occupied peninsula. Ukraine had shut down the canal after the annexation 8 years ago, but the Russians reopened it after they took control of the region. In national news, Pence tells GOP to stop lashing out at FBI over Trump's search. Former Vice President Mike Pence on Wednesday implored fellow Republicans to stop lashing out at the FBI over the search of Donald Trump's Florida home and denounced calls by some of the former president's allies to defund the FBI, saying that was just as wrong as a push by Democratic activists to shift money from police. Pence also said he would give due consideration if asked to testify before the House committee investigating the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. His pleas for restraint comes as law enforcement officials warn of an escalating number of violent threats targeting federal agents and government facilities since agents last week searched Mar-a-Lago as part of the Justice Department's investigation into the discovery of classified White House records recovered from Trump's estate earlier this year. Speaking in New Hampshire, Pence said he had been troubled by what he called the politicization of the FBI. He also said the Justice Department and Attorney General Merrick Garland should be more forthcoming about what led authorities to conduct the search. But Pence, who is trying to stake out his own political path as he and Trump both consider 2024 presidential campaigns, also had a message for the GOP. I also want to remind my fellow Republicans we can hold the Attorney General accountable for the decision he made without attacking the rank-and-file law enforcement personnel at the FBI. In business news, Fed saw evidence of a slowing economy at its last meeting. Federal Reserve officials saw signs that the U.S. economy was weakening at their last meeting, but still called inflation unacceptably high before raising their benchmark interest rate by a sizable 0.75 of a point in their drive to slow spiking prices. In minutes from the January 26-27 meeting released on Wednesday, the policymakers said they expected the economy to expand in the second half of 2022, but many of them suggested that growth would weaken as higher rates take hold. In more business news, U.S. retail sales were flat in July as inflation takes a toll. The pace of sales at U.S. retailers was unchanged last month as persistently high inflation and rising interest rates forced many Americans to spend more cautiously. Retail purchases were flat after having risen 0.8% in June, the Commerce Department reported on Wednesday. And finally, in more business news, stocks slip on Wall Street, erasing weekly gains for S&P 500. Stocks closed lower on Wall Street, led by drops in big technology companies and erasing the S&P 500's gains for the week. The S&P 500 fell 0.7% on Wednesday, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the Nasdaq also fell. Small company stocks fell more than rest of the market. Wall Street was absorbing a mixed retail update that showed inflation pressures continue to affect businesses and consumers, but also shows that spending remains strong. Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. It's on time for a message from my book, Words I Choose to Live By. Enjoy. Good Thursday, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb, and welcome to Words I Choose to Live By. Accept your ability to shine and thrive where you are, and you will be on your way to embracing your inner purpose. Have an amazing Thursday. We are part of my conversation coming up with Renee Linnell in today's Entertainment Spotlight. Stay with us. You're listening to Conversations Daily News. For Conversations Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with the Entertainment Spotlight. Renee Linnell joined me on Conversations Live, the radio show, to talk about her new book, Still on Fire, and sharing her story with the world. Here's a bit of our conversation. You're already, enjoying the response to the new book, Renee, Still on Fire. What has it been like for you to see the way that people have, one, been expecting this book and waiting patiently for it, but now being able to enjoy it? What has that been like for you?
It's so wonderful. I think any artist, when we put our offering out into the world, it's such a gift from the heart and the soul, and so we always, of course, want people to love it and sit there nervously hoping that they do, and then when we find out that we really have touched their soul with ours, it's just the biggest reward we can get.
Vulnerability, that's a word that we now say a whole lot these days, Renee, but you have been able to live in it. Talk to us about that. What has that been like for you from the burn zone to Still on Fire, to be able to embrace vulnerability and to be able to allow it to be able to teach you and guide you?
Well, not only is it incredibly liberating to be vulnerable, but it really bonds us to our human brothers and sisters. I think we're taught from such a young age that we have to be different than how we are, and we have to people please, and we have to fit in, and we can't share so many of our stories that we have shame around because we're worried we won't be loved or accepted. And I've just found we all have trauma, we all have tragedy, we all have stuff that we did that we're ashamed of or that we think we should not have done. And when we can share that openly, it's so liberating to everybody, ourselves most especially.
Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. We thank you all for tuning into this edition of Conversations Daily News. We'll have to get on tomorrow to wrap up this week. Until then, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Daily News today. Then let's go make it a great one.